Awesome. Thank you so much, Cynthia, and the whole organizing team for AWS User Group Kigali. I'm really excited. I know we should have had this session tomorrow, but tomorrow I'll be at LX Karibu ceremony for I think Kenya participants who are going to be joining LX. So I was invited as a panelist. So we agreed with Cynthia that we have it a bit earlier so that you don't miss anything. And I'm excited that we are here in Kenya. We are just celebrating Mashujaa Day. So today is a public holiday in Kenya, and we're celebrating the heroes of freedom around that space. Although I don't think I can put myself in that space where
Yeah.
I can call myself a freedom fighter. Anyway, okay, so I think it's time for me to share my screen. We get the business overview. We don't have a lot of time in this, and we have quite a number of things to cover. So let me just do this from the beginning, and I get back to my Zoom. I share my second screen. Okay. So as you're starting out, I really want us to be very interactive. So please make sure if I call upon you, I'll be calling upon people if you're too silent and tell me what you're doing. So this is so hopefully the screen is clear, Cynthia?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. So this is the security and compliance. This is section 14. You've been on a journey. I'm sure right now, this is not the first time you're talking about security. Many other speakers before me during this cloud practitioner bootcamp have mentioned one thing about security in one way or another. When you're talking about IAM, you might have talked about security. When you're talking about maybe setting up a VPC, whether it is networking, there is an element of security in each and every service. And that is why AWS calls it job zero. Security is job zero at AWS. So that does mean that before we think about anything else, regardless of what it is, whether it is cost optimization, whether it is that, security and compliance comes first. So it's very important to ask ourselves certain questions. But before we get to that, maybe it's important to let's get to know each other and maybe get to understand where we are and what it is. So just a little bit about me. This was just the few things I saw I could put. Hope they don't look too much. I have a bit of industry experience, and call that a bit. I'm a cloud consultant with an organization called Data Armor, as well as at some point in time I have to step in and get my hands dirty by being the developer. I also coordinate ODEL and Computer Academy I think I input that at Tharaka University in Kenya. I'm also a certified educator. What that means, I hold some industry certifications that give me the 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 ability or the license to teach those programs in computer science, cybersecurity, AIML, and data analytics. There's one time Cynthia asked me, Kevin, what are you good? What is your specialization? I'm here. I saw you speak about SageMaker somewhere, and then again you're here on security. What are you really good at? But I I think I found a way of trying to answer that in a good way. That I'm trying to know how to use AI and ML for cybersecurity purposes. But it was a nice question. It got me thinking, surely, really, what should I be known for? Then I'm an LX Gold Fellow. So that means I'm selected and honored to be the top 5% of tech talent in Africa in terms of LX. The amount of talent that they have from all the programs, whether it's software engineering, AWS, data analytics, Salesforce, all that. And then I'm an AWS community builder, also an AWS Academy lead and builder project reviewer. I get projects from AWS Academy and I review for them for quality purposes. Then I'm an Atlassian community leader, and recently I was accepted into the Atlassian Creator Program. as well as the campus outreach lead for the ISACA Kenya chapter. ISACA is a cybersecurity and information security audit association. It has a global footprint, but within the Kenya chapter, I serve in the Special Programs Committee, and I hold 2 AWS certifications currently, the Cloud Practitioner and the Solutions Architect Associate. So, but I'm looking towards already scheduled for Developer Associate and Security Specialty sometime in January after the festivities. So hopefully by that time, I'll be holding for them. And I love project management. I want to get into project management so that I understand a whole bird's eye view about that. So let us ask ourselves, that's just pretty much about me. You can put more about yourself. I would like to know you, what it is, what you're doing, what are your aspirations. And as you answer that, please help me, put it in the chat for me. Thank you, Cynthia. These are just, I tried to look, I had to actually distill. There's so many things that I do and try to say, no, should I put this? Does it really make sense? But okay, that was, it's been long since I put an about this slide somewhere. But I say it's very important. So let us put it in the chat. Let us answer this. I told you this is an interactive session and I'd like to listen from you. We are going to be learning together. I'm not coming here to bombard you with a lot of information. Security is a responsibility for everyone, whether it's the developer, whether it is the security solutions architect, whether it is the CEO, because without the money, there is no budget for cybersecurity. So it's and even the end user, if they are social engineered, if they fall for phishing attacks, no matter how robust your security system is, yeah, the end user can really mess you up. So let me ask this honest question. We are here. How many of you, if you've ever been hacked, just put something like a +1 or something. Just tell me if you've been hacked, or if you've never been hacked, you can tell us how good you are and what you're doing in terms of not being hacked. And I'd like to get to know from you. Yes, Jean-Eric, can't say something, or you just unmuted. Eric, did you want to say something? Okay, good. It's okay. Cynthia?
Oh no, I was going to comment on Eric, but I've never been hacked. But sometimes I
Wow.
anticipate that I'll be hacked because of my password policy thing. So I'm trying to be best at having a good password policy, because honestly,
Wow.
yeah, I might get there.
That's good. You know, there's this thing. Personally, I'll answer that. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that. You've taken one for the team. I wouldn't have gone to the next slide unless somebody answers. So they usually say that there are two things in it. It's either you've been hacked or you're waiting to be hacked. And the good thing, Cynthia's just put it very well. You are part of those, not just never been hacked, but you're waiting to be hacked. So there's nothing like I've never been. You're just part of those who are waiting to be hacked, because as it is said every time, there is no fully secure system. I don't know that you saw it in the news I think in the last 2 weeks, AWS announced that they were able to stop one of the largest DDoS attacks that have ever been exploited or sent through their AWS system using CloudFront. And they are saying there's this new attack called HTTP reset attack, and it was coming up with around 20 million requests per second to the CloudFront. So you can imagine, and it says they were able to automatically mitigate that and protect all their customers who are leveraging CloudFront service. So that's something to note. It's very important to note that even AWS themselves, they say they can even say they've been tried to be hacked or some way of that. So that takes us to a very important aspect. I'll tell you my story about how I was hacked as at the end of the session. and how I almost lost my AWS account and what I did really to secure it. I've talked about that at the Zimbabwe Community Day, and it was really interesting. And I usually leave it all over again, and it is actually the reason why I got really interested about cloud security. I wanted to learn it so well so that I don't fall victim over and over and over again. So now that takes us to the AWS shared responsibility model. You wouldn't want to learn this the hard way. You wouldn't want AWS support to tell you, no, that was not our responsibility. It was your responsibility to do that. And that is why you're being hacked. And you'll have to pay that money that has gone towards maybe provisioning certain large instances or whatever it is that happened that resulted in maybe your AWS account being closed and maybe being disabled or even being severely limited in terms of the services you can use. So we have two types of responsibility, and I'll try to see whether I can, let me try to see whether I can use my pen here. Bring it up here so that I can annotate on that screen. It's loading from Timbuktu, coming all the way face back. Okay, I think maybe I opened it twice, but it's okay. That is why so I just need to close one. Let me see if I can just close one of them. I've opened two pens that I don't need. Then I can see whether I can use this. Let's see if it does that. It is not doing it on that end, so just do this. Let me display technical. It is trying to make me look as if I don't know how to do this. Let me swap. Okay, cannot swap now. Let me stop my share. And then I swap my presenter, view and the slideshow. And then I'll share my screen again. Sorry about this. And then I share my screen on. Good. Awesome. I think I can now live with these. I'll stop my video to help people in terms of their bandwidth. Good. So let's use this. Good. So as I've mentioned, there are two main responsibilities. There's the responsibility for AWS, which is the security of the cloud, and we have the customer responsibility, which is the security in the cloud. One thing to note when you're talking about this is then there are also shared controls. Not forgetting that we have also shared controls here. That means that there are things that you share it between AWS and yourself. So what does this really mean for us? It means that you cannot and you imagine this agreement. When you sign up for an account, you automatically have accepted the terms that on terms of the shared responsibility model and how it works. So taking it into perspective, let's look at this. AWS is responsible for doing what? Protecting infrastructure. And when I talk about protecting, wow, what did I do? Good. So we're talking about protecting infrastructure, which you're seeing basically from this kind of thing. We're talking about protecting infrastructure. We're talking about the hardware that are there to support the services. For example, there's a very rigorous security assessment and levels of security in an AWS data center in any kind of region. You cannot just say I want to go to an AWS data center today and tomorrow you are allowed and you are there opening up and seeing where your EC2 instance lives in an hardware, in a server rack, in a data center within AWS. So there's a very rigorous way of trying to ensure even the data center engineers who work there they go through a security protocol for them to access those premises. And then it is also the responsibility for AWS to manage, to work on managed services. So what that means is the hard drive or the SSD or the hardware that runs maybe all the space within maybe DynamoDB, RDS, or S3 is none of our business as the customers. That is why every time you're told this is a managed service. So it means that it is not for you to deal with the updates that are required, changing the hard disk to the SSD drives to the latest generation, and all those kind of intricacies when it comes to managed services. Then, when you're looking at these other perspective, the customer responsibility that you're having right here, remember the keyword here is it is the customer's responsibility in the cloud. And this usually comes, these are the reason why this is very important and you're starting with it. It appears it is an assured question in the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, which most of you, I think, by the end of this Cloud Practitioner bootcamp are going to pass because you're really good. You're doing the challenges. I'm seeing a lot of positive energy from all the participants of this bootcamp. So I can't wait to see you get your certification. So when talking about the customer responsibility, it's about the things that you as the customer, your decisions around that affect the security of that specific thing. It might be your AWS account, it might be your EC2 instance, it might be your data for your application, right? So for example, for an EC2 instance, the customer is responsible for management of what you call the guest operating system. So what that means is running security patches and update. For example, if you've spinned up an Ubuntu instance, it is your work to update, to run the sudo apt-get update and apt-get upgrade. If you don't do that, you don't expect AWS to come in and be logging into your EC2 instance and running that command for you. That can't happen. But when it comes to where those EC2 instances are hosted on, the hardware that runs them, that is the work for AWS for you. Then also firewall. You remember that when you are spinning up, you know you've already done compute, is you are able to set up the security group, which is a form of a firewall, if you can call it a stateful kind of one. You are setting up which are the rules are you allowing, which IPs ranges are able to access a certain port. And again, also when you're doing VPC, when you're setting up the network configuration, the route tables, the NACLs, network access control lists, all that is also, you can see it is a responsibility. You don't expect AWS to come and help you. Although there is what we call the AWS well-architected framework, where you get a lot of prescriptive guidance on what you can do and some of the best practices to ensure that you are coming up with a scalable, resilient, and secure AWS infrastructure. So then IAM, you already know it is a global service. I think there was a whole section, a whole week just around IAM. And that means identity and access management plays a very huge role when it comes to security. And it is something that anyone, especially anyone aspiring to get into cloud security, should understand very well. Then finally, we have encryption of application data. So if you're also maybe uploading sensitive personal information, it is their work to ensure that you encrypt it. And that is why we're having maybe even services such as Amazon Mesh, I don't know, it's called Meshi or Mashi, which is used to help you in terms of detecting personal or sensitive data that have been uploaded on an S3 bucket and help you, but it's not going to encrypt them for you. It is for you to make sure that you encrypt it. We're going to look at encryption as we move on. And then some of the shared controls are the ones that between you and AWS has a responsibility on that control. as well as yourself. For example, when it comes to patch management. So, for example, when you're patching, let's say, an RDS, you can see. So there's some part, for example, you can choose, there's a version, and some of the, for example, if you're using maybe, let's say, MySQL on RDS, so there's a version there. And that version management, the security patches for that version would be managed by AWS, some part of it. And another part of it would be your case when you're supposed to run a certain command, or maybe when you get a certain guidance from AWS that you need to do this and that and that. They have done their part, then they want you to do your part. That becomes a shared control. Then also configuration management. So what that means is, for example, ensuring that when you're setting up certain configurations, they are for the best interests for the security of your infrastructure and your whole architecture, the way you're going to deploy it and get the infrastructure on the AWS cloud. So it's very important to understand that for example, AWS has maybe might not be providing for you the ability to configure, let's say, what can you, maybe let's say encryption for certain managed services. So enabling that, for example, the other day, AWS announced that encryption will be there by default on S3. Some time back, you could be able to set up, you could be able to upload items and have them stored in an encrypted format in an S3 bucket. Then they later on decided that configuration is not going to be allowed anymore, and by default encryption will be there. So you can see this is a shared responsibility. But then again, in that configuration of encryption, you can choose whether you want AWS to use the S3 KMS managed keys, or you want to use your customer managed keys, which you're going to see later on in this session. So there's a diagram. There's a very famous diagram that we usually see every time called the shared responsibility diagram. And this is the shared responsibility diagram. So this just gives you a whole perspective around what we mentioned. The customer is responsible for security, as you can see, security of the cloud, as you can see here. And it is the whole part of customer data is the responsibility for the customer. So there's a time when I'll tell you my story when I was when I was hacked or my AWS account was compromised. It was I could not tell AWS, can you delete this? They told me you have to delete it yourself. It is not for us to do that. So that you can't blame them that why did you delete this? I didn't tell you to delete it. So always make sure that you remember that you are responsible for your data. And then also platform applications, and I have already mentioned that the OS network and file configuration is part of the customer. All things regarding client-side data, server-side encryption when it comes to the file system, as well as the data when it comes to maybe, let's say, you're having your own instances. And then also the traffic, protection of traffic when it comes to the encryption, integrity, and the identity. And this depends on the service that you choose, because certain services provide you more secure connections. For example, if you're looking at maybe a private link compared to a VPN, there's a level that has higher security. Then again, as we mentioned, by now, when you look at this, AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud and not in the cloud. And this means the software that is used to run the compute device, the compute, and we talk about the software is compute, the storage, the database, as well as the networking, and specifically also the hardware and the global infrastructure, the regions, the data centers, the availability zones, and even the edge locations. All that as part of the global infrastructure, it is not up you to manage for that as a customer. So that is the famous shared responsibility diagram. Please make sure it gives you a snapshot. And anytime you are working with a client, it's very important that you make them aware of what their responsibility is and what the responsibility of AWS is. So we're talking about the shared responsibility model, and when we're looking at now, we have even other we are having other services. And talking about other services, we're talking about services that help you to do much more in terms of your security. And I would obviously, since I would also want to do a demo of sorts, I would really want to make sure that I'm in line with this. So we just do this and have this on my other screen. Let me just sort this out. Good. So as we move on, so we're going to cover this much more, but there's a service called AWS Shield and AWS WAF, Web Application Firewall. And what these two services do for you, they help you protect automatic, if I can say, stress-free, hands-off protection against DDoS attacks. I'll just talk to you about the recent DDoS attack that AWS was able to mitigate. And you can see the standard one comes for all customers at no additional cost. But Shield Advanced has some advanced, or I can say some added features that are only accessible when you subscribe for it. For example, you can have access to a DDoS or a security response team that can help you know what you really need to do, and they are there on call. Think of it like when you have some security guards helping you. So when the alarm rings, there's some people are now called from HQ to come to the rescue to do some configurations, helping you to just overcome anything, for example. And also another thing that I've seen from Shield Advanced is that you can, even if a DDoS attack creates a huge bill on your AWS account, they are able to zero rate that and help you you're not going to pay that because it was caused by a DDoS attack. And then we have WAF, which helps you to filter requests based on roles. You're going to see some of these services. And there are certain services that have protection enabled together inside them. And one of them is CloudFront. I already told you, and I'll still repeat about that big DDoS attack of over 50 million requests per second. CloudFront was able to deal with it because of
Are you with us?
Okay.
Yes.
It's like Larry is engaged in some other thing.
Yes. Sorry. Okay, let's move on. So you're going to see them as you move on. So this is very important. Why do we need to do this? We need to build distributed denial of service resilient architectures. What do we mean? That, and you already know this, for those who are there within the East Africa region, you must have heard about these security, I can say, is it a hacking group called Anonymous Sudan? And they have been best known for what? Setting up DDoS attacks, especially on maybe government sites. So if you have not set up a DDoS resilient architecture, and trust me, it's very easy in terms of intellectual capacity, and in terms of what you need to put, in terms of the brain power and the manpower you need to put to set up a DDoS. It is easier to do that than even to get maybe privilege escalation and getting into the network and stealing the data or compromising certain systems because of what? Because of the trail. It is easy for you to be detected and now to be caught. that you are hacking a system. So that is now, it's very important. And I'll share with you these slides, and you're going to check on that link on how AWS protects customers from DDoS events. And you'll be able to get a very detailed microscopic view of how AWS does that. So it's very important to understand what is a DDoS and how does it really work. And if I could put it into perspective, think of it like you created your architecture, and you're expecting at any one time, at peak period, you're going to expect maybe 5,000 concurrent users on your application that is hosted on maybe AWS cloud. Then what happens when you get 300,000 concurrent requests or concurrent sessions on your architecture? Maybe you've set up auto scaling, so it will try to maybe reach out to 100,000. But what happens to the 200,000? And even when it has auto scaled, it is not auto scaling to help users. That is a DDoS attack. So it is not only adding costs to your infrastructure and to your services, but also it is not providing those legitimate users the service that they need. So you're being billed because your architecture has scaled up, and then again, still your customers are not receiving value for the services that you say you're purporting to provide. So remember, this happens through what we call bots or zombies. So one computer is infected, then it is used to get others to be infected, and once they are converted into zombie computers or botnet for attacks, they now start sending requests to that same server, and that server is unable to handle those requests, and even at some point it can crash, and the normal users now see the server as maybe not accessible or not responding, or it is timing out, which can really, really, really frustrate you. So when it comes to these architectures, you can see here, we have our users here, right? And when they're requesting, these are legitimate users. For a DDoS resilient architecture, you have AWS Shield Advanced, which takes as a combination of maybe Route 53, Amazon CloudFront, and AWS Web Application Firewall. So what is happening here, if I can just take you into a journey around that, this is what is happening. So you're having, if you by now you already know that there is what we call the OSI model. And not about the OSI model, we're having maybe, we are looking at maybe layer 3, layer 4, and most of the time layer 7, right? So when you're having those ones, you'd want to protect, you can protect your architecture maybe at layer 7. Then since you forgot to do some protection at layer 3 and 4, you are being attacked at this level, and since you don't have any protection, then things go haywire. You wonder why you set up these, but you're not getting protection. So that is where now AWS Shield Advanced comes into play, because it also uses what we call application context. And what application context is all about is understanding what is happening at the NACL levels. You already know that we have, so we have NACOS, Network Access Control List, and we also have the security groups. So if you look at it very well, NACOS are maybe looking at it at layer 3, and security groups are looking at things at layer 7 of the RSI model. But when you go deeper, as you understand, you can see now, by the time the request is coming from users through AWS Shield Advanced and now getting to the VPC, by now all the DDoS attacks have been being mitigated, and only the legitimate users are getting through to requests from the ELB. So that means that your application load balancer will not auto scale because of a DDoS attack, but only because of legitimate requests from the users, right? So, and at any point in time, if you have a question, I would be happy to see. Let me see, I'll put up my chat somewhere. So if you have any question, I'll be checking it out, or you can even unmute at any point in time so that I'm able to answer all of you. So that is a DDoS resilient architecture, and it's very important to think about DDoS attacks as you architect, as you work towards developing software. So I'll still get into a bit more detail about what is the difference, because Shield standard is a free service and it is activated for all of us when you're using AWS, and what it does for us and what AWS Shield Advanced does. And this is usually a very key area that is usually looked at in the cloud practitioner exam. So remember that Shield standard is a free service. It is activated by default for every customer, and it provides protection against some SYN flood or UDP flood attacks, and also reflection attacks, and some other layer 3 and layer 4 attacks. But then again, we have now Shield Advanced. So if an organization is mature enough, and it is usually a target, because you can imagine the amount of attacks that a company like Meta or Alphabet or which is this company that it's called ByteDance, the one that manages TikTok, right? You can imagine the amount of attacks they mitigate on not even a daily basis, but even on an hourly basis. So that means that them spending $3,000 a month is a bargain compared to them not having such a service running in place. So this one can help in protecting against more sophisticated attacks. For example, anything that is targeting the EC2, anything that is targeting the load balancer level, CloudFront, and even the AWS Global Accelerator, as well as Route 53. So any attacks that is targeted on these services, which usually happens most of the time, you're also able to be protected. And if anything goes haywire, you have 24/7 access to a standby AWS DDoS response team, usually called the DRP. And then again, you also get protection against the higher fees. I mentioned this earlier, when there are spikes in terms of the usage due to a DDoS attack. So let's take it to the next level and see what is happening here. Then we have the other service called the Web Application Firewall. WAF, if you are really serious about the application that you're building on AWS Cloud, and then you should not compromise on not having the AWS Web Application Firewall as part of the architecture that you would suggest to a client to deploy. So what does Web Application Firewall do? It protects your web application against some common web exploits that are known at the layer. The layer here is layer 7, and layer 7 is all about HTTP. But remember the other layer, the lower layer, and layer 4, it's all about the TCP, Transmission Control Protocol. But remember that WAF is responsible for layer 7. Layer 7, WAF, layer 7. Then we have it is deployed on the ALB, the application load balancer, the API gateway, which usually used as an interface for us to access maybe Lambda functions or even our REST APIs. So another thing to note also, it can also be deployed on CloudFront. You already know that when you deploy CloudFront, you're trying to ensure that users at the level at nearest, they get lowest latency when they're accessing your applications, as well as your static assets, by having those content cached in edge locations that are closest to the users who are using them. You can set it up maybe for a specific region, or you can set up CloudFront to leverage all the edge locations all over the world. So once you do that and you're using CloudFront, it you need to ensure that there's some protection so that you're only getting legitimate requests coming through CloudFront to the edge locations, to the cache servers, or even from the origin. Then we also have, how does it really work? How does web application firewall work? And we need to get this into perspective. We have these thing, we have rules, right? The first thing is rules. And when you're doing with rules, it's coming from what we call the web ACS. I mentioned earlier about the network access control list, but in a web application firewall, it's called the web ACL, the web access control list. So the rules can include maybe IP addresses, HTTP headers, HTTP body, and even the URI strings. So you can have a rule that, for example, that says for any IP that is coming as if it is appearing from Russia, as an example, and then don't allow that IP to go, don't allow that request or that traffic to go through the web application firewall. Then also, again, it can protect from the common attacks such as SQL injection and even cross-site scripting, which usually happens through forms, requests that are coming from forms that have not been sanitized, and you've just put it, and maybe somebody can leverage and get access to the DB through an SQL injection attack. Then also you can set up size constraints just to ensure that a payload or maybe a request should not come from if the request or a traffic is coming with a size of larger than this, then please drop that packet or drop part of that traffic. Then also you can do geo-matching. This is what usually happens when people are unable to access certain services from, you're told that one is not available in your country. That usually happens through WAF. Then also you can do what we call rate-based limiting. So you can protect yourself from DDoS attacks by saying that if the requests come in at the rate of more than 3,000 requests per second, 5,000 requests per second, then please block that kind of a traffic, limit it to this level, and ensure that you have some form of DDoS protection using the web application firewall. Moving on swiftly, we have from the web application firewall, we move to the network firewall. So what does the network firewall do? From compared to the web application firewall, which is just interested in HTTP and layer 7, the network firewall helps you protect what? It protects your entire VPC. So that is the thing here. It's all the way from layer 3, layer 4, layer 5, layer 6, up to layer 7. And it does that in any kind of direction, whether it is inbound or outbound. So you are able to inspect the traffic that is coming from one VPC to another VPC, maybe through a peering connection. Traffic that comes outbound, that is going out to the internet, coming in from the internet, and then to or from certain services such as direct connect and site-to-site VPN. So how does that do? How does it work? So it works in very interesting ways. Let's look at this simple architectural diagram. So this is our internet here, right? So you're having it here. So if you're having it there, let's look at what is happening. I think this should be an IGW, yes? And if you're looking at it in a very interesting way, you can understand this kind of thing. We are having the network firewall, which is the one that it is here in red, right? And it is protecting the whole VPC, whether it is even in a private subnet. And if you are having a VPC to VPC connection through a VPC peering connection, such as this one here, then also it protects and you're able to inspect. And if it is a direct connect using maybe a corporate data center, you're connecting that to the AWS VPC through a VPN connection, it is able to inspect that traffic. and also if it is also an option of direct connect, as we've mentioned here. So remember that compared to the web application firewall, the network firewall protects the whole spectrum within the OSI model from which we now try to understand traffic, apart from the physical and the data link, all the way from network to the application layer. So that is the network firewall for you. And there's something that is really, really important to understand. There's a certain thing called penetration testing. So what penetration testing is, it is a way of trying to check how vulnerable or how resilient or how secure your workload is on the cloud. And AWS has some rules around penetration testing, and it is very important to note this. And I would even, if you have time, please, I'll give you a link. There's some, if you're really interested in terms of security and compliance, there are different people or maybe providers who give you labs and sandbox AWS accounts for which you can do penetration testing in a safe environment. Remember that if you don't do it the right way, AWS will immediately close your account. And this is very important to understand. So look at these services. AWS has only allowed you to do penetration testing on this list of 8 services. So though it can change over time, as at what we were looking at, it can allow you to do penetration testing on EC2 instances, NAT gateways, and load balancers. It can allow you to also do some penetration testing on your RDS, on CloudFront, on Aurora, as well as the API gateways, and the Lambda functions and the Lambda edge functions. Lightsail, which is an out-of-the-box, not much thinking about it, but you get some consistent billing. For example, if you decide to spin up an EC2 instance and you want to be billed only $5 per month, Lightsail can do that for you. So you can be able to penetration test against Lightsail. You can test it out. If you're starting out on AWS, the best place to usually start and even help your clients start out at ease is the Lightsail. Then you also have Beanstalk. Beanstalk allows you to deploy applications. You just set up the code, and AWS now sets up the infrastructure for you. So you can also do your penetration testing on these 8 services without needing prior approval from AWS. But then again, there are prohibited activities. There are those that you are not supposed to do. These are some of the things that you should not do, and AWS has a no tolerance towards penetration testing that are prohibited. So some of the things that you cannot do on the AWS cloud is DNS zone walking via AWS Route 53 hosted zone. So DNS zone walking is where you are trying to move from one DNS zone to another, checking out some of the things that are there. It's really prohibited by AWS. Then again, anything regarding the denial of service. And we've mentioned these, and you can see I'm always focusing on these kind of attack vector, the denial of service attacks, because it has become one of the most used attack vectors in recent times. So anything regarding the denial of service and trying to simulate it on simulating a denial of service or a distributed denial of service is not allowed on the AWS cloud. Then again, you're not allowed to do port flooding and even protocol flooding. And then again, anything regarding request flooding, such as flooding the AWS cloud with some login requests or even API requests in the name of penetration testing. You would need to check this site which I'll still provide on once you provide the slides, and have an idea of what you can or cannot do in terms of penetration testing. Even as whether you're a solutions architect or a cloud developer, you need to ensure that your security team, or even if you're working in security, knows what they can or cannot do, especially when your workloads are hosted on the cloud. So that if there's anything, there's usually an email that is provided so that you can email AWS, and it will still be there on the slides. I'm going to check it. I'm going to add it. It's called AWS-security-simulated event at amazon.com. So that is the email that you send a request, then AWS can maybe approve or not approve that for you. So that is penetration testing. That's pretty much it. Then I think by now once you've covered, you must have heard about encryption. And since you've already said, and by now you should be understanding from the shared responsibility model that the customer data and the encryption of it is the responsibility of the customer, right? So what that means is you need to ensure that you encrypt data both at rest and in transit. So what do we mean when we say at rest and in transit? So when data is stored somewhere, for example, like right now, if you've downloaded your video, maybe when you've stored it on your memory card on your phone, that data is at rest. It is already there on your phone. It is lying there. If you maybe downloaded your payslip, for example, or your salary payment slip, and it is there maybe as a PDF document on your phone, that is data at rest. So, and you've seen most of the time, if I use that example, if you're having a payslip, most of the time, even if it's a PDF, you would need to maybe, when you open it, it requires a password, which maybe it is usually varies from one organization to another. And from that, you can do what? Let's see if I can open up yeah. So you can do what? Let me also, I try to feel, I'm thinking I'm on video, but I'm always constantly looking at the camera and thinking that I'm on video and I'm not. And what you get, because it's important for you to get the gestures around this, is you get to put in a password, which is agreed from one organization. You can do your ID number, and once you enter that, you're able to access the full details about what you are paid, what was deducted, and so on and so forth. So that is a way for that organization to do what? To protect the data at rest, because they might have protected it the way it was being transmitted from their server to your phone, right? But if it leaks out, or if maybe somebody is able to hack your phone and they find that PDF of your payslip, if it is not encrypted, they're able to know everything about you, right? So that is something about you need to understand. So let's look at this example. Data need to be encrypted in transit while you are uploading it to maybe an S3 bucket coming in from maybe, let's say, an EFS. And then also, once it is encrypted, it should be encrypted at rest. Where? It should be encrypted at rest at the EFS as well as at rest on the S3 bucket. And you can see at this example, I already mentioned about data being stored or archived on a device, right? That is, we can do on a hard disk, it can be within an RDS instance once it has been saved. And maybe let's say even when you've set up lifecycle rules on S3 and your data has been transitioned to lower paying tiers such as Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive. So that data is at rest and it needs to stay, for example, especially in highly regulated, and that is where you're talking about compliance. You might, a compliance requirement, maybe you need to retain data for 7 years before you delete it. Maybe that can be a HIPAA, Health Information Protection Act or regulations, maybe having GDPR and all these regulations that you need to comply to. So how will you be able to retain data for 7 years and ensure that it is secure such that you're not going to get into lawsuits that the data was leaked. You already know the issue about WikiLeaks and all these kind of things, in the Cambridge Analytica and all those kind of scandals around that space. So let us look at these into perspective. We have also data that is in motion, that is in transit, data that is being moved from one location to another. And remember, still, it is your responsibility. For example, if you decide to set up maybe SSL using AWS Certificate Manager, you're trying to ensure that there is some encryption when data is moving in and out of that application using HTTPS instead of using HTTP, right? So remember that when data is being moved from one location to another that is in transit, for example, when you're transferring data from on-premise, you're migrating from on-premise to the cloud, you should ensure that that data is also transmitted in a way that nobody, even if there's a man-in-the-middle attack, nobody will be able to make sense of that data because it is being moved in a format that is encrypted. So we want to encrypt data in both states. So another example is, for example, when it is moving from EC2 to DynamoDB and all these. So how are we able to deal with encryption of data, both at rest and in transit? We're able to do that in a very clear and straightforward way. We use encryption keys. And what encryption keys does, it gives you that power to deal with encryption in a hassle-free. And we're going to learn about customer master keys and what is there in that space. So let's get on to something else. And if at any point in time you have a question, please do ask. It would be great to know whether we are together. So that takes us to this. That takes us to KMS, right? What about security and compliance? And especially compliance, one of the things that is usually looked at with a lot of scrutiny is how data is stored and how it is encrypted and the level of encryption or the strength of the encryption such that somebody cannot take the data and decrypt it and make sense. How much of the compute power they need and how many days or years or thousands of years for them to now be able to decode all that it was there and be able to use that. So remember that anytime you hear encryption in an AWS service, most of the time it must be likely KMS. In some instances, you might be even using KMS without realizing it. And one of the easiest way to remember that you're using KMS is when you are storing your website or you are creating a static website on S3. You leveraged KMS, SS3 and S3 encryption, SSE, and KMS encryption because right now encryption is enabled by default on what? On S3. Then we also have AWS manages encryption keys for us, and there are two things here. There's encryption where you opt in for it. There's encryption where encryption is automatically enabled for you. So where you have to decide, you have to agree you want enabling of encryption is on EBS. You also need to, like as I already mentioned, right now you don't just opt in. You have to choose between it is by default server-side encryption, SSE, that is what I was mentioning about, and then also Redshift database, encryption of data, you have to opt in. What opt in means you have to tick somewhere on a checkbox that I want to use KMS, right? And then also RDS when you're encrypting the data at rest on RDS, and also even encryption of data on EFS drives, right? So where it is automatically enabled, as you can see here, is on these three services: CloudTrail Logs, S3 Glacier, and Storage Gateway. So there's no compromise on that. You don't choose whether or not it is automatically enabled. And this is obviously something very intentional by AWS to ensure that when you're dealing with CloudTrail logs, they're what? They're encrypted. When you're dealing with something that is coming from the glacier and that is stored for a very long time at rest, it's also encrypted. So we move on because I know I need to get onto a quick demo for you guys. So there's another service, let me not call it a service, but think of it like, I think you've been told about snow cones, snowball, and all these S3 related services where you can get a hardware device for you to shipped to you by AWS, and then you put in your data, then you have it shipped back to AWS for them to now transfer it to your S3 bucket as such, right? Same case for, there might be requirements, where you need to use HSM. So what does HSM stand for? HSM stands for Hardware Security Module. So here you get your dedicated hardware, and that hardware, you are now responsible for doing what? Managing your own encryption keys. So AWS is not responsible for that. You are the one who is managing which keys is being used and which keys are not being used. But now what happens is AWS is the one that provides you that hardware, that encryption hardware, usually called the Cloud HSM. So, and then now AWS, remember that for KMS, AWS manages the software for the encryption, but in Cloud HSM, you can see you are the one responsible for those encryption keys. And in certain levels, certain compliance requirements would require that you use your own HSM instead of using AWS managed services such as KMS. And remember that HSM is tamper resistant. That is what is very important. And it is compliant to FIPS 140, 142. So if you're looking at what leads, for example, if I can just open it up on this side and just bring it up on my end. Okay, let me just get to this from this. Let me tell you what does FIPS compliance. And just get to that up. So you can see, for example, let me see this. FIPS compliant. What does this mean? To be FIPS compliant, an organization must adhere to data security and standards outlined in the Federal Information Processing Standards. So they are different. For example, you can see FIPS 140 covers the cryptographic module and testing requirements in both hardware and software. Then there are other standards, 180, 186, 197, and all these are requirements. And for certain regulated environments such as finance and healthcare, they might be a need for you to be compliant for some of these FIPS standards. So I'll also make sure and at your own time, and maybe I can share this with you onto the chat. You can check all about FIPS, Federal Information Processing Standard, right there. Let's move on. Our time is really flying like crazy. So then again, as I've mentioned, at some point, there are also other requirements in security where the customer wants, instead of AWS managing the keys for you, through AWS managed keys, you want to manage your own keys as the customer or your client. For you as the cloud practitioner, the client or your customer wants to manage their keys. Now that is where what we call customer master keys come into play. So there is different types. So we have the customer managed, we have the AWS managed customer master key, and then we have the AWS owned CMK, and you also have now the cloud HSM, which we've just talked about, which is the custom key store. So if you're going to be looking towards becoming a cloud security consultant or a cloud security engineer, as when you move from maybe cloud practitioner, you would want maybe to do the security specialty certification. And this is now covered in a lot of detail, where you have to go into the depths of understanding all these types of keys. But for now, I'll not go into too much detail around them, but I'll give you an idea of what all of them mean. So for customer managed CMK, you can create, manage, and it is created, it is managed and used by the customer, and can enable or disable. Also, there's a possibility for you to set up what you call a rotation policy, so that maybe you can say after 1 year, you now start using a new key, but maybe the old key is always preserved, just in case. And also you have the ability to now bring your own key to the KMS. So that is now the possibilities that you get with EW, with the customer managed CMK, which CMK stands for Customer Master Keys. Then we have the AWS managed CMK, and this one is, as from the word itself, from what we can see, it is created, managed, and used by, or used on the customer service, and used on the customer's behalf by AWS. Think of it like when you're using services such as S3, EPS, Redshift. All these services can leverage the AWS managed CMK. Then we have now the AWS owned CMK. So what does that tell us? These one are the collection of the CMKs, the customer master keys, that an AWS service owns and manages for it to be able to use it in multiple accounts. So this example, for example, can be used to protect resources in your account, and these resources but you can't view those keys. So you can be able to check maybe some examples around that. And from Cloud HSM, as I've mentioned earlier, it's a hardware. So these keys are generated from your own Cloud HSM hardware device, and the cryptographic operations and the key material are all generated and performed within that Cloud HSM cluster in that hardware device. So certain highly regulated environments require that instead of using what AWS is providing through software, you have to use a hardware security module. So then there are other services which I'll just brush through, but it's important for you to see them in a bit more detail. We have the AWS Certificate Manager, and the AWS Certificate Manager, from the word itself, it helps you generate SSL certificates for you to be able to use in the different services. For example, if you want to use it on an ALB or within an instance, you'll be realizing when you're spinning up an instance, you have to use the HTTP and port 80. But with Certificate Manager, you can have a certificate set up, and now you are able to access the instance using maybe port 443 for HTTPS. Then we have Inspector. Inspector, what helps you? It helps you in finding the vulnerabilities within certain services, that is EC2, Elastic Container Registry, and Elastic Container Registry images and Lambda functions. So it is using that service, you're able to now gather vulnerabilities. Think of it like, I usually think about Inspector and I think about a detective. Although I know there's another service called Amazon Detective, but I look at it and when I remember the movies of an inspector moving around, they're trying to look for evidence in a crime scene. So I always relate evidences in a crime scene to software vulnerabilities. Then we have Artifact. So Artifact is not necessarily a service. You must remember that it is a way, it is actually an ability. It allows you to get access to some reports. Remember, this section is all about security and compliance, and certain compliance reports are required for you to prove that you are compliant with a certain standard, maybe the PCI standard, the ISO ISMS standard 27001, ISO IEEC, Information Security Management System Standard, PCI, HIPAA for health information, and even finance related compliance reports. So AWS Artifact helps you in that regard. Then we have guard duty. Guard duty is a very interesting service that helps you look at if there are any malicious behavior that is, it can be able to compare between normal behavior and malicious behavior within the VPC, the DNS, and CloudTrail logs. So those three key services, when talking about the network, the VPC, the DNS, and the CloudTrail, that is where guard duty is in its element. Then we have another service called config. So what config does, it helps you look for sensitive and not really, it helps you do what? It helps you look at what? At some of the different, let's say for example, I've ever done a lab, it was all about let's say you set up it in a way that you don't want security groups to be put in a way that somebody can allow port 80 and access to anywhere, or maybe make the security group useless by allowing all ports, access to all ports and accessed by any IP. So if config finds that, you can automatically remediate that by deleting that specific rule. So config helps to see how you've configured and whether there's a deviation from the rules that you've set up in config. And then we have Amazon Meshi or Macy. I don't know how I can put it up, but Amazon Macy. Macy helps you with helping you to find some of the sensitive data, for example, personally identifying information. And since we are in the era of data protection, and many of our African countries are now setting up offices of the Data Protection Commissioner, as well as having a Data Protection Act, it becomes very critical to know how you are storing your sensitive data, especially in certain, for example, publicly accessible Amazon S3 buckets, or even if they're not publicly accessible, how is it that can somebody who has logged in, whether they're using an AWS account, they're able to see some of these sensitive data, for example, payroll information, those who have been hired, those who have not, how much everyone is earning, or maybe even their medical conditions. These are very sensitive data that if they are leaked out from an organization, it can really hurt their credibility. So that is something to note. Then we have Security Hub. So this one helps you aggregate security findings from multiple AWS accounts. And always, the good thing about AWS, they're very, very intricate on documentation. So for all the services that I'm mentioning, there's usually a very deep user guide that helps you understand what a service is not only just all about, but even examples of how it is implemented or used, and even some of the best practices around using a particular security service. So if you are talking about multiple AWS accounts, you can gather security findings from all these. If you're an organization, might be having even hundreds of AWS accounts within it. So if you're gathering findings from all these accounts, you can leverage Security Hub to have those findings aggregated. Then we have CloudTrail, which can help you to track some of the API calls that have been made by users within an account. It can be able to track management events and even data events. So if somebody logs in, it tracks that. The moment I can say hacked, the first service I decided I must have on my account, however much it will cost me, was CloudTrail. Because without CloudTrail on, I could not know what happened in that time or that point when my AWS account was being compromised. So if you haven't enabled it, it doesn't cost much, trust me. Please enable it on your AWS account, CloudTrail. It helps you have a vivid view of what is happening on your account. If there's an API, any API call, whether it is a login, whether it's a download from an S3 bucket, can help you. But then again, remember, you don't want to log everything. So always log only what matters. So when they give you some recommendations, try to check that so that you don't have a huge number of logs, especially if your account is really active, or your account you have multiple accounts and you're in an organization where AWS is used really intensively. So a lot of data can be generated from these management events and the data events. So then we have detective. So detective, as I told you earlier, there was inspector and detective. It's very important to know they might look similar, but they're really different. So as you had mentioned earlier, what does inspector does? Inspector helps you find some software vulnerabilities. But what detective does, it helps you find the root cause of security issues or suspicious activities. So as much as inspector is helping you know the software vulnerabilities that are there for those services such as EC2, ECR images, and all that, a detective helps you know the root cause of security issues. That is the keyword around it. Why did this really happen? What was the reason behind the reason? So detective helps you do that. Then we have another important service called AWS abuse. So this service helps you to report some of AWS resources that are used for abusive or illegal purposes, such as crypto mining, which is really not allowed on the cloud, or maybe things such as maybe even child trafficking or slave trade, or maybe suicide, hitman for hire, and all these kind of things. You remember there was a time when there was a lot of issue around certain services that allowed people to you register for an account, and then anybody can anonymously post what they think about you. They can even say you are this. They can say bad words, and you'll not know who that person said. So it started out as a very huge thing. Then they died out. Why? Because when a cloud provider knows that certain something is affecting maybe the ethics and the morality of a society, they stop a certain service. And that is where you can see those services usually crop up, then they go down, they crop up, then they go down. They cannot be maintained for a long time because nobody can fathom being told nasty things just because somebody on the other side knows they're not going to be known. Then something very important. I wish I could even pause at that. If I had more time, I could spend like 3 hours on this. Root user. Anytime you open an AWS account, you usually have the root user, and it usually has certain privileges. From a root user, you can change your account settings. You can even close your AWS account. You can only do that. You cannot do that from an IAM user. You can only do that from the root user. And then another thing you can do from the root user is you can change or even cancel your support plan. Another thing that is very important and looked at in the cloud practitioner exam is the different support plans. For example, the business, the enterprise, even the basic support. So we're not changing from these different tiers of AWS support. You were most probably going to use what? You're going to use your root user to change your AWS support plan. Then again, you can also only use your root user to register as a seller on the AWS marketplace, or what we call the reserved instance marketplace. So those are some of the services. They're not really that comprehensive, but those are some of the things that you can do. And it was announced by AWS that starting I think start of next year, apart from the issue about the payment for public IPv4 addresses, that they are going to enforce multi-factor authentication on root user accounts. But as at now, it is optional. You decide to do it or not. But when you move on to in 2024, you're going to AWS will enforce that you must have multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor is where you have another level of of authenticating apart from just using the password. Maybe you have to use what you have or who you are, like your biometrics, or you can use what you have, like your phone or your email, using magic links, and even other levels. For example, right now we even have using face detection, iris scanners, all these kind of things. Then we have the IAM Access Analyzer, a very important resource for anyone to identify the resources that are shared externally. It is usually found within the IAM service, and it helps you know what is happening and how your resources. And from it, you can know some of the policies you need to generate to ensure you work on the principle of least privilege. So the principle of least privilege is all about ensuring that people have only enough permissions for them to do the work that they're supposed to do. So you don't just give them the whole EC2 that they can spin up the P4D, the most powerful instance on AWS. And then by the end of the day, you have an AWS bill of $1,000 or $1,500. That should not be the case. And the reason why that is the case is maybe because you give someone access without following the principle of least privilege. So that is the IAM. And yeah, so now that takes me to a very interesting, this as I wrap up on the presentation, is that story I told you about my case. It was case 130-1037-0066091. It looks like a number for someone going to prison. but it was one of the most frustrating AWS support interactions that I've ever had in my whole interactions with cloud. It also it actually made me feel I need to think twice about what I'm trying to do and whether cloud is really something for me, because what happened is my account was compromised. So how did it get compromised? I almost lost it actually. And when we're moving on, what happened is I pushed to code. I was doing my final project for LX, and you are supposed to push the code to GitHub so that the 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 people, the mentors, or the reviewers can look at the code and confirm that you actually did the work, then you can finally graduate. I was really excited. It was around 2 a.m. in the night. It says, now I'm finally done with this kind of thing. Cloud developer done and dusted, and here I am about to graduate from this whole hectic course that I've done for around 4 or 5 months. But little did I know that what I was doing, the Git push that I was doing, was going to was going to be some of the things that I'm going to regret for several months. Why? Because as you can see, what happened is I did not put the .env, which you can see here, is a .env file. I did not put it under what? Under the, let me just do this. And, under this file called the .gitignore. So what happened, and also my Postgres, my username, my password. Also, it's just that I just couldn't put it here, but I also had this access key ID as well as the secret key also listed here. So what happened is the person, and I don't know how it usually happens, because there's some people who they're just there, or maybe there are bots that are constantly scanning when somebody pushes these credentials on your GitHub on a public repository. So this is what happened. I was doing, once I was done, I decided I need to do something else. Maybe on the next, I wanted to spin up an S3, I mean a SageMaker instance, so that I can do my machine learning. But I got this error, resource limit exceeded. Then I was wondering, what resources I have credits, so why am I getting resource limit and I'm being told to contact customer support? So by the time I was going back, I got these emails. And as you can see, even from the time that I'm showing just right here, as you can see, the time was 12:51 a.m. in the night. It was the July of last year. And I was being told, Kevin, your dear AWS customer, thank you for using AWS services. You recently requested for a service that required what? Additional validation. Trust me, when you spin up the largest instance on AWS, it goes through these guys called AWS verification. So, and funny thing, when your account is new, those requests become automatically get validated. So you can see I was spinning up a very large instance in Osaka region. Not me, that person had already compromised my account. Then let's look at this. This is 12:51 a.m. This is 12:53 a.m. This is 12:53 a.m. 2 minutes later, I'm already spinning up another big instance in Cape Town region. 1 hour later, remember this in the night, I'm already asleep. I'm feeling so fulfilled. I'm done with my project. I'm not knowing that this is happening. I've also now been validated that spin up another large instance in the Europe Paris region. So you can imagine the amount of cost that is happening. So I decided to open a support case on that date, same date. You can see it was early in the morning, that one, and at 2 p.m. I was opening up a case after I woke up and saw those emails and saw there's something that is not right. Look at this. It happened, it is case 103.91. That case ended, it started in July, it ended in September. 3 months of harrowing, being told this is the customer, the shared responsibility model. And I was told this particularly when on the final email. Remember, as per the AWS, what is this? Okay, let me just delete that. As per the AWS customer agreement, the customers are responsible for all activities that occur under the account. This includes all the applicable fees and charges for AWS services. But as a once-off exception, we approved a credit of, I was given some credit of some hundreds of dollars that have been applied, and it is also used to apply to absorb any service charges that was happened when my account was compromised. And that was after a harrowing experience. Just that I cannot give you the whole paper trail of what I did. I was supposed to delete all those instances, go into each and every region, Paris region, Cape Town region, Osaka region, and just delete those instances, delete those key pairs. And it was really, really crazy. I wouldn't want that. So what did I do? I set up multi-factor authentication. I don't compromise on that. Even if it's an IAM user, I have to enable MFA just to ensure that even if somebody gets my password somewhere, unless they have also stolen my phone at the same time, which can be really, really weird, and they have to know which MFA application that I'm using, then they're not able to access my root user as well as my IAM user. Then the other thing I did is I used temporary credentials by enabling IAM Identity Center. So IAM Identity Center is a service. Remember earlier on in the Cloud Practitioner Bootcamp, when you were doing the IAM session, I asked whether there's a difference between IAM and IAM Identity Center. And Cynthia was quick to also mention that there are two different kind of a service. And most of the time, right now, AWS recommends that instead of setting up long-term AWS credentials, security credentials, you leverage temporary credentials using the IAM Identity Center. And that is the demo that I'm going to give you. I've been keeping a certain account without IAM Identity Center just for this session so that I don't enable it, because once you enable it, I don't think you can disable it, then come back again. So I'll enable it live today so that you're able to see how it works. Then finally, you have to set up logging and monitoring. I already told you I did that. The first service I did was CloudTrail. And then another thing is you also leverage AWS budgets, set up a budget, get an alert anytime money it is dealing with maybe even above $1. If you've already recently opened an AWS account, please do leverage what? Do leverage the free tier budget, so that anything that is going beyond the free tier, you're getting an alert. Or even a zero spend budget, where if at any point in time it is going to go beyond $0, you immediately get a notification that at the end of the month you're going to be billed $1 or $2. I know AWS budgets costs you something, but it is nothing compared to getting those notifications. But it doesn't cost a lot. Then you have CloudWatch, leverage that, just ensure that you have logging and monitoring. So there's this site, it's called AWS Cloud Security Trials. It has all those trials for security. We know security is very expensive. No one likes spending on security. They want to just spend on their own, maybe the CI/CD pipeline or a Lambda function or whatever, or an RDS where all the work is happening. They feel that spending on security, what I'm just spending on something, it's just like thinking of, why should I put a door above a door, and I'm not seeing people who are going to come and do a robbery in my house. But when they do and they find the door was open, what will happen? So I'll give you these. Please do check out the free AWS Cloud Security Trials, so that you can see all the services that I've mentioned listed there, as well as the trials that are offered and what are free. So remember this, security is your responsibility, and building security is in your job description, whether you're a cloud developer, whether you're a solutions architect, whether you're a DevOps engineer, whether you're a software engineer, whether you're a cloud support engineer. It is in your job description to help your clients and yourself to build security within your organization. And as always, as AWS puts it out, it's job zero. Security is job zero. Then you get to one, where it is maybe whatever it is, whether it is building your CI/CD pipeline or setting up your serverless or containerizing your application. Regardless of what you're doing, remember that security comes fast. And the only way it comes fast is becoming job zero. So thank you for that. We will delve on to IAM Identity Center, and I will see. So let's see if we can just log into AWS Management Console. Let me click on this. So I hope my screen is still visible. And
yeah,
if at any point did I miss anything? Thank you. Oh, there are no chats yet. Good. So you haven't missed anything. But if there's anything, you can always check it out. So let me log in. I'll have to go check my phone. It was charging on the other side so that I put the MFA, but it's just some few steps from here. It's loading. Just close. So don't know whether you're like me. I fear closing tabs. I don't know why. I don't forget what I was in at. So this one, I think I need to sign in as the root user. Just sign in as the root user. And let me sign in as the root user. So I'm using my password manager on Chrome. Let's see if I explain. Let me bring my MFA. On my phone, let me see. Open my authenticator device, and let's get my phone up. Which one? It should be the root user, which should be root. And we see from the next 30 seconds, 037, 676. Beautiful. I'm in. So this is my root user. loading up. So this is my root user, and you're going to see a number of things, but because of the essence of time, I'm going to guide you towards what you can do. Then if there's anything you want us to do a specific lab, maybe on guard duty or on IAM access analyzer, we can do it at any point in time. We can do more of these labs. I'll give you even a security workshop for us to do together, where we are only having a whole hands-on. So let us look at IAM Identity Center. So let me just tell you, I told you I enabled CloudTrail. So let me just show you CloudTrail first. So it helps me know everything, management or whatever is going on in my account at any point in time. So you can see right now, I can see this is what happened at 6:39 while I was presenting to you. There was something that happened like update instance information. That came from ssm.amazon AWS. So I think usually the security manager. So you can see it is the one that is generating several logs for now. SSM is always updating. You know, SSM is usually very important to help you manage your instances. And I can see it has been working on this instance. And if I want, let me see if I can go to another, if I'll find another event. So SSM is the one creating lots of logs. Read only. Let's see if I can find one that is different from SSM, but there's a lot. So you can see even I can download. But most of the time I'm seeing SSM is the one creating a lot. But I usually use these to help me know what has happened. So it's just that right now, for example, if I do my insights, I can, if I want, I can enable that, but it usually has additional charges. But if I go to my dashboard, you can see it is logging all my management events. I enabled that just to ensure that I know what is happening. And you can see that, do you see that when I logged in at 6:40, which was just 3 minutes ago, it was logged, right? And I can even go deeper and be able to see who logged in. It was from which IP, it was from a Windows computer. It should have been either Chrome. You can see it was successful, and I can even get to know the IP of the person who logged in. This is my current IP. If I just check what is my IP, you can see my IP right now is 196.250.12.45. Do you see that is the IP that it has logged? It's the same one here. So that is very important. That is what CloudTrail can do, that can help you get to know what is happening in your account at any point in time. So let us go to IAM. I'll show you IAM Access Analyzer. Another thing is also you need to know how to use the IAM Policy Simulator. It helps you, instead of having to maybe try to delete an instance to confirm that the policy works, and you're trying to delete a real instance, you can use a policy simulator. So this is my IAM. So my IAM has these. I don't have so many things. This is my personal account. It's not a work account. So you can see under access report, there's this part written access analyzer. So access analyzer. So let me do this and I do that. So let me open it up. But so far, so good. I hope you're learning. I know this was kind of a marathon and I would have wanted it to be as more interactive than this. So you can see if I decide, I can say I want to create an analyzer here. I can just leave it at the default zone of transfer current account, add tag, and I just do create analyzer. So this analyzer, so you can see it has a finding ID, my IAM role, cognito identity, it has access level. So it is now analyzing what are the things are here. So we can see intended if this access is such as what a few external cognito. So you can see I've enabled cognito, it has found that. And then you can see if the access isn't intended, it indicates a potential security risk. Use the console, the service associated, modify and remove the policy. So you can go back and look for this exact role. You can see this role called put manage only. So if I can just say go to IAM console and I look for this from that you can see it has taken me directly to this. You can see it is under roles. And I can decide I want to delete that role. Maybe I don't delete. For example, I think I was doing it for a certain, and you can see it was created on June 27, and it had a maximum session duration of 1 hour. It is used for cognito. I can just decide, okay, no, this role, it has an issue. Then I just delete it and I see, no, I'm not going to deal. And let me just first of all confirm the permissions. Trust relationships. So you can see these the trusted entities, cognito identity, blah, blah, blah. And that. So I can decide to delete, and that is what Access Analyzer can do for you. So we have IAM Identity Center, which was my final part before we close the kind of a demo or something. So, and then again, I told you there's so many services on security. You cannot do a demo on all of them. Security and compliance is so wide, but remember this, it takes a lot. So you can see I told you I had not enabled these on my account just to show you how it works. So now I'm going to enable it today. So what happens when I enable IAM Identity Center, what it does is, you can see we detected that your AWS account does not currently use this service, but let me show you first, even before I enable it. Let me try to show you something. Let me go to IAM before I enable it, and I try to create a security credential for one of my IAM user. A security credential can be access keys for programmatic access. So I'll try to create one, and you see the recommendations by AWS on what I need to do to make it more secure. What I told you that AWS usually recommends that instead of leveraging long-term credentials, you can substitute that for short-term credentials so that life becomes easy. So I have these 3 users. Let me just, let me not mess with this one. I usually use it a lot. So let me go to this one. You can see I even used it 6 days ago. This one is also another way to understand how things are working. I've not used this for a while a bit, but this one is also for crazy long time ago. So I'll use this one. And then remember I'm in the root user. So you can see this user, I gave him access to Lightsail and the ability to change their own password. Just those 2, principle of least privilege access. So it was a friend of mine who wanted to leverage Lightsail to how to use Lightsail on my AWS account. So I just gave them that access. So let's say they want to get programmatic access. So you can see I also did not enable console access for that person. So they can only access Lightsail because Lightsail has its own console, but they cannot access the AWS management console. So let me create an access key. So you can see this one is for programmatic access using CLI, SDK, tools for PowerShell, and API calls. So if I try to create an access key, and instead of, I try to use CLI, Do you see what is recommended? Use AWS Cloud Shell. So they're saying I try to use this one here. This is a broad-based CLI, or use AWS CLI version 2, and enable authentication through what? Through a user in the IAM Identity Center. So you can see they're telling you, please, 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 please don't do this. Then you can see, you say, I understand the above recommendation, I want to produce. So you have to say, if I try to say next, they say, please confirm that you understand, because they have given you alternatives, but you are forcing yourself to use the access keys for long term. So let us now use the IAM Identity Center. Let me enable it. And what happens here, I will be able to access organizations, which enable single pair centralized cost tracking. It will allow me to create and invite other AWS accounts into and so that I can manage multiple accounts. It will also allow me to do what we call policy-based control and what we call SCPs, service control policies, which you can apply across AWS accounts. And also it will help me simplify organization-wide management of some of the different AWS services. So it is asking me, would you like to create an organization for you? Would you like us to create an organization for you for now? And it will enable IAM. We will also enable IAM Identity Center as part of this process. If I try to say cancel, it will not work. You can see I can only deal with IAM Identity Center if I create an AWS organization, which I will create. I pended that process for this account for me to demonstrate that for you. So it must be loading right now. I'm now getting an AWS organization. And you can see now that I'm here, you can see it has some recommendations on what I can do, but let me show you some users that what I can do, and it is really, really interesting. You can see IAM Identity Center doesn't have any user right now. Let me just create a user. Let me call it maybe Kigali, and then I'll generate a one-time password that I can share. And then I can just put my email address. And then I can say, yeah, Kevin Tuei, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, no worries. So I'll just click on next. Groups, if I want, I can create a group, but I'll pen that for now. But it's always as best practice, you create a group, then you add a user to a group. So just don't want to create. So then I'll add the user. I just want to show you how the interface looks different from IAM Identity Center. So you can see this is a very important part of IAM Identity Center. If I copy this, let me open Notepad on my other side so that you don't see. But I'm going to delete this user immediately. So even if somebody is going to see this video later on, they're going to compromise me. And also I've not added that person with any access. So let me finish up with that. I've tested it somewhere. It looks weird, but it has shown me where all the things. It has also showed me the one-time password. So I can show the password. I don't think anyone can understand it right now. Then I'll copy it. So what I'll do, I'll copy this. I'll open an incognito window. And I'll paste this now somewhere where you save, and it usually looks different. Now this is how users will now access their AWS accounts through this console. So the username will be Kigali, and the password will be this. So it is loading. So this is what IAM Identity Center and AWS organizations offer you. So it gives you a login feel as if you are logging into a builder ID, but you're logging into an AWS account. And even you can enforce something like MFA so that all users, they have to enable MFA before they continue using the service. And you can also add other things such as permission boundaries and such. So the username, you remember it is Kigali. And the password is what I copied. I sign in. It is asking me to put another password, then just do that and I put a 1. To do that and I put a 1. And then I set the new password. And then once I'm in, so you can see, do you see what has happened? The moment I logged in, it tells me this is nothing because I've not added the user to any group. So let us do something to these users. Let's give them some small rights, So let me just do a group, and I call the group administrators, admins. Then I'll add Kigali to that group, and then I'll create the group, and then I'll go to permission sets within IAM Identity Center. So permission sets just help you bring together the different permissions that you require, then you can assign it to a group. So IAM Identity Center really works like magic. It makes your work very, very easy and easy to manage. You don't have to worry. I usually use it for when I'm going to work in unsecure environments, because the session keys are created, session tokens are created along the security credentials. So you can see I can use a predefined permission set, or I can customize one. So I can say I want administrator access, if I want billing, if I want a permission set for somebody who's going to be a database administrator. So you can see I'll get that for a data scientist, for a network admin, for a power user access, read-only access to all the service, to some services. Somebody is going to be doing security audit. A person is doing cloud support, the system admin, or just view-only access. So what do I give them? Just give them billing, database administrator. May not use administrator access. We already know how that works. So then I'm going to go to next. So this is the permission set. Then I'm going to create next. So you can see permission set details. How long should the session be? If I want, I can reduce the session to maybe 30. The minimum is 1 hour and the maximum is 12 hours. I can see this permission set is valid for maybe it's 12 hours because people need to work a long time. And then you go to next. Then I can tag that permission set if I want, but I can do that. So once we have that and we have the groups, so we can see whether we can assign that permission set, then you're going to refresh and see whether we're going to get console access or something on that case. Then you're going to get it done. So, sorry. Where am I? Sorry. Here we are. So admins, here we are. Users in the group, delete group, permission set, application assignments, AWS accounts. So if I want, I can add more accounts here. So let's see what happens. So before I go to the accounts, you can see it is going to load my account. I don't want to load my other details about my account and other things. So let's go to users and see whether we can assign them. So you can see it was created manually. So also identity federation can happen through organizations. So you can see I've not verified my email, and you can see active sessions. So you can see this one active session. It is able to say that it is happening right now. And yeah, so these user access permission sets. Yeah, let's see whether if we refresh it, we use our incognito for this one. So still don't have, because I need to now use that permission set under that. So settings, disable user access, no worries, settings. Let's see. So that is that, authentication, multi-factor if you want. So you can see maximum session duration is usually 8 hours, then you have period logged out. So you can see you can delegate and you can delete the IAM configuration. but I want to now use this permission set. So this permission set is the one that I'm going to leverage for the Kigali user to now have it. So you can see if I have it, so you can see it's not provisioned. So it is loading, and we can provision it. So you can see provision status not provisioned. So you can see policies, database administrator, inline policy, so accounts. So you can see no accounts are using this permission set. So if I want, I can find accounts tags. So I can look at AWS accounts here and make sure that my account, so you can see this is my management account, and then I can assign users. I can assign admins to my account, and then you can see the group name, and then I just go to next. I select the database administrator permission set for the admins, then I just submit that. Then it's going to be provisioned. So you can see it is now configuring my AWS account. We re-provisioned your AWS account, the applied permission set to the account. So you can see, so that is how it works. So if I look at it, if I try to refresh now, I should be able to find that I can access maybe database related only for that. So let's see, they need to sign out. And then I sign in again. So it makes it very easy. And IAM Identity Center is beautiful. The way I've been able to use it before, it makes life so easy. So maybe I sign out, then I sign in again, but I don't know if that really affects. So you can see that is how organizations work. And if I want, I can create another group. So this group, I can rename it and call it DB admins or something of that case. So I've logged out. We just wanted to test that access, and then we come back and then we close the session. So let me copy this username, the password, and I add a 1. Then I sign in. Let's see whether it's going to work with the reprovisioned permissions. Says, you can see now I was seeing you do not have any application, but I can now see AWS account, Kevin Tuei, and you can see if I want command line or programmatic access, it can retrieve, and you see what happens here. I get an access key ID, a secret access key, and a session token. So a session token is now another layer. So you can see I can provide this directly, and I have not needed to create it all over again. So I can configure my terminal. These instructions for Mac, instructions for Windows, instructions for PowerShell, and you can see create access for account Kevin with database administrator, and these are these. If I open the console, if I want management console, I can open it here. So it will redirect from here to the AWS management console, and you're going to see, can we go to EC2, and what can you do on EC2? Since this one is a database administrator permission set, it means that we have only power over database related services and nothing else, nothing related with EC2 or maybe Lambda or anything relating to that side. So we're going to just test that, then we close it. But then again, remember that security is something that you get better when you practice. So, and if you're doing anything on security, it's important. So you can see I've just realized it is on Stockholm, but no worries. This whatever I'm testing is not related to a region. So I'm going to open EC2, and I'm also going to open RDS, and then I'm also going to open S3. Then we see what happens. Let's see whether we have access to all these kind of things. So remember that, and you can see from this database administrator /Kigali. So I'm already knowing that this is the permission set, database administrator, and the user is Kigali. So it is going to load. but I don't know why it defaults to the Stockholm region. Maybe it is the nearest, I mean, it may be the nearest region from where I am right now. So, but let us see what happens. So we are going to expect a lot of API errors on EC2 because this user doesn't have access to EC2. So we're going to expect a lot of errors here because this person should not be accessing EC2. Their work is not supposed to be working here. They should be working somewhere else. So that is why after then you're going to see a number of errors around this space. And you can see the first error, the another error, another error, another error, API error. And all this is just because I don't have permissions to deal with instances, right? So if I go to instances, I'm also going to get an error. So, but for RDS and S3, which are still loading, I don't know why they're loading from all the way from Stockholm, but you can see instances, the first thing I'm getting, you're not authorized to perform this operation. Life is easy. I don't have to really think too much whether when I did the database administrator permission set, whether I put everything. But when I go to RDS, I'm going to expect this person has more. And you can see I'm not getting an error. If I decide to create a database, that I'm going to be able to do that, and you can see I'm able to do so much more on the RDS because I have the database administrator permission set. So, and for S3, I'm also going to expect some error of sorts because it is also a service that I didn't include in the permission set. If I wanted, I could have added another permission set for S3 if this person really wanted, but I think I'm able to get access to it. Maybe I can list the buckets, no worries. But let's say if I want to create a bucket, maybe say test bucket, then I put so very different numbers just to ensure for the purposes of ensuring it is globally unique. So do you see what has happened? Successfully created the bucket to upload insufficient permission to apply default encryption. So you can see the way for default encryption. After that, you cannot do that. Although the bucket was created, maybe it is part of the database administrator, because I think from that permission set, which we can analyze if we want to, which we can look at, for example, from the permission sets, we can see whether what is happening and why that the default encryption cannot be applied, because without that you cannot upload anything in a format that is not encrypted. So another way you can look at that permission set and look at some of the policies. So you can go to that policy. It is an AWS managed job function. It will take me to the other side of IAM and look at that permission set. So basically that is it, but it's very, very, very important for me to clean up as we move, and then I can bring back Cynthia to now finish up. I know it is quite something, it is quite a lot to digest, but no worries, you're going to learn with time. So let me just clean up as we speak. It's very important. So I'll delete this user and I'll go to groups. I'm going to delete this group. And then I'm going to go to the permission sets, which I think it was still loading on this side. And I'm going to, so you can see I don't need to do this, so I'll log out of and I'll close that. And I think the ones that were there on this other side, I can close them all because this user has already been deleted, so nothing can happen from here. So even if I do this, so this user, so even if I want MFA devices, I can register an MFA device if this user was there. So I can sign out of that. And yeah, so this was the permission set loading, if I'm not wrong. I thought this one was the one for the permission set loading. I wanted to delete the permission set. So that is IAM Identity Center for you. And there are many other services. I would advise you, if you want to get some hands-on experience on AWS, as well as you can say AWS security workshops, workshops. So let me load that. So you can see here they are, AWS security workshops. So just open it up, awssecworkshops.com, or even you can say these are workshops.aws categories security, and focus on doing so many workshops on security. You can leverage your account, especially if you have credits, you can do so much more. So you can see these are some of the workshops. I can open it here. You can see access delegation, infrastructure identity, permission boundaries, what I mentioned, serverless identity, zero trust, infrastructure, detection and response, how do you scale threat detection, DevSecOps, integrating security into pipelines. It's a level 300, you get this. This is an example of one, but this is the most extensive one. Security workshop, there's a cognito, verified IAM policies. There's so many of them. I can't even scroll down. How to use Terraform to deploy AWS security solutions. Different levels. You can see level 300, level 400. Level 100 is usually the basic, like going up to level 400. Firewall manager, startup security baseline is a basic one. You can start with the level 100s if you can. Yes, and you see you have the AWS network firewall workshop, the one that I've just mentioned, AWS networking, implementing DDoS resiliency. We've talked about building the resilient DDoS resilient architectures. It's a level 300 workshop. You can test it out. Then you can just click on get started. Introduction to wireless application firewall. All these are possible. So I'm sharing these on the chat. And at any point in time, you can try them out. If you face some challenges, please reach out and we can work on a lab together. If you need access for us to do it together, I do have a sandbox account that I use. So if you are fearful of your own credits, you can come in, then we do one or two together. So that is it from me. And thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Kevin. This was very insightful, and I've really learned a lot as well. And actually, could you share the links in the group? I think once we're done, but this was very insightful, and thank you for bringing the AWS Identity Center. I've never used it before, but now I want to use it because I just see the different benefits it brings compared to IAM, and it's so much easier to set up. So yeah, thank you. I mean, we're meant to do a Kahoot, but there's someone I need to rush to. So we'll do this Kahoot for our upcoming session. Sorry, Kevin, did you say anything?
No worries. I think I was just coughing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was saying we're meant to have the Kahoot, but there's somewhere I need to go. So we can do it in the next session, and plus also some of the things we would have learned. So the next session will be about machine learning. And we'll also kind of like view the different machine learning services. So thank you so much, Kevin. I don't know if anyone has some questions. Hi, Yvonne. Okay. I think he wasn't a question. Okay, but Kevin is in the group, so if you have any questions or maybe you're trying out.
Hello.
Hi, Yvonne.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a question?
Hi. Thank you for the session. Just want to say thank you to Kevin for the wonderful session we have had. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. We hope to see you in other upcoming ones as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. This was really insightful, and thank you for your time.
I had a question. Like now in the field of web development, I don't know for the beginners. Oh, okay, maybe it will be another session, but it was just a concern on my side. Yeah, they need to help.
So, okay, I didn't get all the question. So you're into web development and Yvonne?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Hey,
The question?
pardon?
Could you repeat the question?
Pardon?
Could you repeat the question?
You're saying like in the field of web development, for the beginners, like there was a concern how we should at least know it, or maybe if there is help somewhere, if somebody can help, I'll appreciate. Yeah, just that.
Okay, so if I got your question well, you are asking for someone in web development, where they can start from. So like using AWS, I guess. Yeah. I don't know if Kevin also had the question well, but I think for me, I would say, I don't know if you have already the cloud practitioner certification. So if you're already certified for the cloud practitioner, then you could go for the cloud developer one, because with that one now you can get more understanding on how you can use your software development skills into AWS. There's also a service called AWS Amplify, which is a really good one as well. You can check it out. It really helps to build web applications faster with AWS. So yeah, that's what I would say or recommend. I don't know if Kevin, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, there's something that is very, very important, and I hope you'll allow me to share my screen just for once. It's going to help everyone, wherever they are in their learning journey, especially for the cloud or something. So please do check out AWS role paths. So, okay, role AWS learning role paths, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So this one, like learn about training or something. So let's see, AWS learning paths. No, this one should be this one. Training by role or certification. So you can see in this link, you can learn by a certain role. And if you decide, you can see you have the solutions architect, the cloud practitioner, the developer, the DevOps engineer, ML or AI, or operations. So if you decide, for example, for her case, developer, I'll be taken through to skill builder. I think so. There's a developer learning plan for AWS beginners to pros. So you can see that you unlocked 3 free labs. I think right now there's one for DevOps for 3 free labs through to the end of October. Then you can learn step by step using a developer learning plan. And beginners, you start here. So when you click on this, you are taken to skill builder. You get over 40 hours worth of content. And also another good thing is the ramp up guide. The ramp up guide helps you know there are so many courses, so many people offering some things, but usually say the best way to learn about AWS is from AWS themselves. So if you're looking at this is the ramp up guide for developer. You start with the cloud essentials, anything about code build, code commit, code pipeline, code stack, code deploy, CLI, OpsWorks, blah, 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 containers, serverless, .NET development, building solutions, and all these are provided for you. And recommended by AWS themselves. And you can see it was updated October of 2023. So this is the latest version of this ramp up guide. And you can download it and have it for yourself. Click on these links. And again, as I've mentioned about the skill builder, you can leverage the skill builder, log in. If you don't have an account, do that. The Cloud Practitioner Bootcamp has been championing the Cloud Quest Cloud Practitioner learning. So you can see this is, for example, the developer learning math plan is 12 hours, 5 minutes. And you can look at the structure. You can see you're going to learn about containers, Fargate, on all these and all these. And once you're done with that, you'll see that you have done enough for you to consider as having enough knowledge for someone who is learning to be a developer. Same case applies to all these other roles. Then you can also learn by a certain solution. So you can learn, instead of learning by role, you can learn through a solution. For example, you want to do something in data analytics, advanced networking, database for games, media services, security, serverless. For example, if you just want to security for our case today, you get a security learning plan. So you just click on start security learning plan, it takes you to skill builder. So this site, which I'll share with you, is the best place to start when you're confused and don't know where to start, or even when you are even not just confused, you're good to go, but you want AWS to do the heavy lifting for you. So I think that is very important. I hope that was important and worth the time to share. So let me also add the links on the WhatsApp group. Yeah. You're welcome. And maybe Cynthia, since there are some people who are not in the WhatsApp group, maybe you can share the group link to the chat, and then maybe that can be something that people want.
You can do that. Thank you for bringing the plans. Actually, I didn't know them, so that's also a helpful tip. And yeah, as we go on, we can also have some challenges in those developer DevOps as the weekly challenges we get to have. So I think that could help a lot of people. So let me share the link, and if there are no other questions, we can just end. So for those who haven't joined the WhatsApp group, they can use this link here, posted. And yeah, thank you all for joining. So hope to see you next day. The other session will be next Saturday. So thank you so much, Kevin. This was really insightful. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia, and the team. Really appreciate it. Do have a lovely one.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.